Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Honored to see you all this Sunday. I'm here with, of course, Rob from Digital Asset News and Benjamin Cowen from Into the Cryptoverse, the new DCA lineup. How are you guys this morning?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Really good to have you here. And I know the audience is so excited. So, how's your weekend been so far, guys? Have you noticed anything strange happening in the markets?
No, Ben, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've looked at it on the channel some, and basically the whole idea is can we close above some of these prior milestones, right? That we kind of set back in April and May, February, March, April, and May this year. Can we get back above those levels? I think the market looks fairly bullish. I know a lot of people are somewhat bearish because of the recent drop and whatnot. But look, we're putting in higher lows, we're putting in higher highs. We're sort of it feels like we're coming up to a crescendo,
Yep.
as we close in on the prior all-time high. So, yeah, I mean, my thinking is more or less like, could we have more drops? Yeah, we could, but I mean, it seems like the market's generally looking pretty good, and the weekend we have recovered. We certainly have recovered some from that drop we had.
Yeah, I did notice as well that there's been a huge amount of action right now on what I refer to as the SCPs. Some of the smart contract platforms are on fire.
Oh,
Elrond
yeah.
pumping, Solana pumping, Avalanche pumping. Those names are. Have you guys noticed that as well? I mean, these things are just all of a sudden exploding out of
I mean,
nowhere.
Avalanche is just going crazy. I almost think it's sort of like pulling a Solana, right, from earlier this year. It's sort of doing what Solana did to some degree. It's just moving up every single day, and people keep thinking like, all right, it's going to drop now, it's going to drop, and then it just keeps going higher day after day.
Yeah, because
Um,
I have this theory as well that people go shopping, and I wonder what you guys think. I think there's people out there they look at things like say, oh my god, Mercedes is too expensive, Porsche is too expensive, BMW is too expensive, but this little Volkswagen Jetta over here is kind of cheap. Market cap doesn't exist. So, do you believe that there is a little bit of that theory with how people buy crypto? They think it's $2 versus $200, or the market cap is a tenth of what the market cap is of another crypto. Do you believe there's an element of that around people's decision making process?
I think there always is, right? Because when we take a look at the different prices, people don't understand about market cap, and they go, "Well, this one is pennies, so why wouldn't I just get this as opposed to like an Ethereum or a Cardano, which is thousands or just a little bit of dollars?" So I think people are always looking for the next big thing. Now, I think the people watching this show right now, I think they're beyond that, but we're not the mass majority, especially the ones that are coming in. I think the people that are coming in, those are the ones that are going to push up prices to astronomical levels, especially as Bitcoin starts to go towards 100K. So I think absolutely.
Yeah. Ben, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would generally agree. I mean, I've met a lot of people, even in real life, that they say they're not going to buy Bitcoin because they can't buy a whole one or something, or they're not going to buy ETH because they can't buy a whole one. I think it does make sense, and people certainly look at absolute prices and market caps. Though there should be something to be said about not only the market cap but the fully diluted market cap as well to try to identify. Okay, maybe it's not a huge issue in the short term if these tokens aren't unlocked, but that is something to consider as well when looking at these projects. I don't think everyone always considers that.
Yeah.
No.
Well, let's talk about something right now. So, a lot of people, there's a lot of theories out there. I've got my theories about what triggered the most recent dip. We're recovering very nicely from it, but people think it's Mt. Gox. I think it could be an element of Mt. Gox fund. I think it could be an element of how hedge funds are shorting the new future ETFs. I think it is a little bit of whale manipulation. What are your theories on what caused the recent dip, and wasn't it a fantastic buying opportunity for those who are still trying to become whole coiners, like you just mentioned?
Yeah, I
Ben, I
mean,
want you to
no, I
take this
think
one.
I think part of it is, and this sort of goes back to something we've talked about before. Is I mean, of course, there's the news stuff, right? And there's always something, but also, there are a lot of people that are sort of expecting, astronomical numbers for Bitcoin immediately, right? And these numbers were put out back in April and May, and everyone's always calling for a 10x from here or for $300,000 by the end of the year. And so it's not hard to imagine either liquidation hunts for people basically longing resistance, and because they've been promised it's about to skyrocket to 300 or 200 $300,000 within like 4 weeks or something. And then there's just like liquidation hunt, right? You grabbing all that liquidity that's down there, and causing a lot of people a lot of pain. So I mean, I think that's certainly contributing to it. Is just people are getting too far ahead of themselves, and they're trying to go big or go home, and a lot of them are just simply getting sent home at this point. And we had to pull back all the way to what, 55K.
55.5.
Yeah, 55.5. It's actually somewhat interesting, because if you go back to 2017, we had a pullback at the exact same time that went down to 5,500. So it was interesting following that. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is these liquidation hunts and whatnot, and grabbing liquidity for the market. And I also think that it's actually a lot better for the funding to go down, and it provides a lot cleaner market. And whenever we do push higher, I think it's going to be a lot healthier than perhaps what people anticipated the prior breakout attempts. By the time it actually happens, no one's going to be expecting it.
Exactly. In fact, there's so much to talk about here. Rob, what do you see? Any reasons you believe?
Well, I mean, everything we just talked about, but it's all the same thing. It's all like a merry-go-round. And one of the things I was talking about just a couple of days ago was some data from Crypto Quant on-chain analysis, which took a look at the estimated leverage ratio.
Yep.
And just 4 or 5 days ago, we were at an all-time high at 0.2. If you have that many leverage plays coming out, and people are looking at that going, wow, everybody's going long. You're going to go long? Okay, well, it's just too irresistible not to short it. So why wouldn't people make a ton of money? Then things start to drop, and then it's a cascade effect. Then people come in and go, they start to panic. So yeah, I think that's a big play. And then, like you just talked about in the beginning, there's always the news, the sentiment analysis. And remember, we're not even at 3 trillion anymore. We're at 2.75 trillion, somewhere on there. It's easy to well manipulate this market. So it's all those things together. Just I always say, just hold strong.
Yeah. In fact, while we're on the topic of Bitcoin, before we jump into the big news, this is something I tweeted earlier this morning. It's probably a little hard to see, but the gist of it is we have RSI on the 1-day chart is basically very oversold. It happened 3 times over the last 3 or 4 months. And also it corresponds perfectly to what I call floors. I'm very big on painting floors and finding support levels. I call them floors. I'm interested, especially from you, because I know you're a TA god, Ben, in this space.
I don't think so. I'm just dubiously speculating over here.
Yeah, but how much do you look at RSI, and do you believe there's a correlation between, obviously, right before we get a big move, and we'll talk a bit about PlanB and his expectations too, but before we have a big move, obviously RSI has been completely oversold, and then it rockets. So how reliable do you believe this indicator is? And because I've back tested it and it works 90% of the time for Bitcoin, I'm wondering what your take is.
I mean, my general thoughts on the RSI are that it is relatively useful. I mean, I think it's really good too at helping to identify not the day the market bottoms or the day the market tops, because we know that it can adjust and whatnot. And you can spend a long time at these certain levels, right? You can spend a couple months at the 90 level, or higher, the 90s. You can spend several months. I mean, what are we at right now in the monthly RSI? We're right around 70, I believe. On the daily, of course, you bring it back to the smaller time frames. Yeah, I mean, we've been, I don't know how low it got exactly, but certainly we were facing a lot of selling pressure over the last week or so. I do think it is fairly reliable and getting a general sense of sort of the market sentiment and whatnot. And what I'm looking for generally, though, on longer time frames, I'm looking at those, where are we building out support and whatnot. And 40K, I think 40K is rock solid at this point. That's kind of my opinion on it. For instance, anytime we've ever held the 20-week SMA or the 21-week EMA as support, we've never gone below those levels ever in the history of Bitcoin. Once it's held, that's it. We never go below. So, I look at this on a more macro time frame and say, look, I think 40K, we're never going to go below it, more than likely. Of course, there's a first time for anything, and there's always a chance I eat my words on that.
Yeah.
But it could be. I mean, I'm sort of thinking of a scenario where if it plays out like a lot of us think it might, looks like we've been oversold for a while on the daily. I mean, I don't know if we went below 30 or not, but relatively speaking to where we were before, right?
Yep.
We've been fairly oversold. If we continue to push higher and we get this lengthened cycle, or we continue to move higher, then I do think we're going to have some type of mania phase. And when we look back in hindsight, all these support levels are going to be obvious.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at for a future bear market to unfortunately unfold, at some point, and for us to probably find support 50K plus or minus 10K is my general thinking. So I think we're building out macro support right now on the larger time frames, on the daily time frames. It's always hard to say because you can always get one more dip before it runs, but
Exactly.
Market looks bullish to me, and I think the relative strength index should help us identify a local top or a market cycle top.
Yeah, Rob, where would you see the floor if I had to hold a gun to your head and say, okay, at what stage would you believe we will never hit again for Bitcoin today?
You know what? It's on the same line with what Ben was talking about. I just took a look at fractals a while back, and I thought, okay, I thought that around the end of this bull run, or around this bull run, the peak, we'd hit around 130K for Bitcoin. Some people think it's going to go higher than that. Some people think it's going to go lower. And I always thought it would retrace around 45, 50K, somewhere around there. And that would be kind of like that point. So, I mean, I think we're all kind of in agreement on the same way. But again, we could have the same type of black swan event that we had in 2020, where it went, precipitously low. And if it's at that point, and we see RSI is going into 1510s and things like that, I mean, sure, that'd be great. I mean, up high, excuse me. So yeah, I think around 45, 50, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I think 41, 42K is the new floor. So if we do have a bull market, it will never retrace beyond that. But we'll talk more about that after. Before we go into some Plan B stuff and price prediction stuff, this all came out over the past 24 hours, the Bitcoin City stuff from our favorite president in El Salvador, Nayib Bukele. Have you guys been tracking that at all? I mean, what he's trying to do is trying to build a Bitcoin city. It's a tax-free area. It's going to be a whole city powered by a volcano, mining, funded by bonds, Bitcoin bonds, etc. It's really stunning. But before you guys answer that, if you believe this is just incredible what's going on in El Salvador, do you believe in the game theory of Bitcoin as well? You got to get in early or get in first for there to be a change, and will other sovereigns follow? So Ben, to you first, because we've never talked about this.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I haven't really been following it that closely. I see the tweets and whatnot, and what they're doing over there. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because they're sort of showing what is possible. Like, are people going to follow this? Yeah, obviously El Salvador is a starting point, and clearly we can point towards that to look. There's some real world adoption of Bitcoin. It's likely going to continue catching on as we continue on. Right, this cycle has been the cycle of not only institutions, but apparently governments,
Yep.
Bringing on Bitcoin as legal tender and whatnot. I would say to not just basically drink all the Kool-Aid, right? I would probably say, it'd be interesting to see how it actually pans out. I know a lot of people in El Salvador might actually have issues connecting to, computers and whatnot, and actually accessing Bitcoin. And so I think it's a good idea for sure, and I want to see how it actually works out once they as they develop it. But honestly, I'm not following it on a daily basis. I sort of just loosely keep in touch with what's going on over there.
Good stuff. Closer to home for you, Rob. What do you think of all things El Salvador and game theory?
Yeah, you know what? I talked about it today, and it was what Ben just talked about I don't know how it's all going to work out, because as soon as I got done with the video, my wife she asked me, she says, so who's going to live in that city, Bitcoin City? I was like, I don't know. She's like, well, who's going to determine that? Because
Bitcoiners, they'll move.
Yeah, if there's no taxes as far as income and land and capital gains, then wouldn't everybody want to do that? Because the whole thing was kind of like with Miami coin and New York City coin, was to help to pay for taxes. So she said, wouldn't they all want to live there? And I'm like, that's a good point. And she said, well, how can they stop that? I'm like, that's also a good point. So when I think about these things, I mean, it's a great idea. It sounds very like James Bondish villain type, like where they're going to be on a volcano. They're going to actually have have it run through electricity and kind of fund the whole city. And like, it's an interesting concept, but I think the big thing that I took away from it is just how much El Salvador and the President Bukele actually went into Bitcoin, because we were talking about how the day that they bought Bitcoin the very first time in September, the next day there was a small correction, I guess I'll say. I want everybody to say it's not a huge correction. And then he immediately bought it again. I'm like, that's pretty good conviction. And then like 2 weeks later, they bought some again. So now they're like around 1,120 Bitcoin or something like that. And now they're going to go for a whole city. So maybe they're the template for other places to follow. But again, like Ben's talking about, this kind of really echoes out for a very long time type of thing.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Right.
Definitely. Well, switching gears. Okay, let's talk. Everybody wanted to ask you guys. Everybody is expecting, $95,000 Bitcoin in November and $135,000 Bitcoin in December, and now we got 9 days left. It's like,
Right.
we got a bit of a hill to climb, boys and girls. So, what do you guys think? Will there be disappointment or will there be fireworks?
First of all, Ben had a pretty good tweet. He tweeted out, he said,
Yeah.
hey, Bitcoin hasn't gone parabolic. I'd like to speak to a manager, please. That was pretty funny, because it's like exactly what we're all thinking. Like, hey, we came in this game to really, really jumpstart our investments. What the heck's going on? So I think to hit 98K like PlanB talks about, and it's not his it's his TA that he's talking about. I just don't see it happening. I could be wrong. I just don't see it happen in November.
I don't think we're going to hit 98K in November, but I don't know if this is how he did it, but just to maybe pull the wool over the eyes of where he came up with these numbers, right? If you look at if you go back to 2017, look at August monthly close 2017, it was 4,700, right? 10x August 2021, 47,000. That was a prediction. Go look at September 2017 monthly close 4,300.
Yep.
September 2021, the prediction was 43,000. October is basically a 10x.
Yep.
Because October's monthly close in 2017 was 6,300 or 6,400, and I think he said 63,000. November, wouldn't you know, the monthly close in November of 2017 was just below 10K. So I think the 98K is coming from basically a 10x multiple of that. And then the monthly close for December in 2017 was 13.9K, I believe. So I think it's a rough 10x. I think where he's coming up with this, which is interesting because again, that recent pullback that we just had took us to 55K, and then back in November 2017, it took us back to 5,500. So even if it's simple, sometimes sometimes simplicity is best. But it looks like at the very least, I would say there's some type of delay, right, on it, because the October close, it came really close to 63K, and I think we might as well give them credit for that, right? I mean, close enough. But I would expect that prediction. When we look back on the cycle, I don't think we're necessarily. I think we'll probably hit these numbers or get relatively close to them. And if he's off by a little bit, he's off by a little bit. But I think we're going to hit 98K by the end of the month? Probably not, but I do think we will hit 98K.
Wow, impressive. Rob, what about you?
I was just let me do something real quick. Let me share my screen. Where'd it go?
You should have all the power.
No, like just what Ben was talking about real quick. Let me do a tab so I don't have to. If we take a look at like these corrections and things like that, I mean, it's just a normal progress, right? Yeah. And sometimes I really forget about just how much it was, because if you're like us, you watched the video, we all lived through 2017 and went all the way through it. So I just remember everything going up. My memory's not as great as it used to be, but there's been some pretty big dips along the way. So to hit 98K, maybe not, but it does seem like things are kind of extending. I don't think we're going to stop out at December. So let's say it just takes us into February or March or something like that, and it elongates. I'm okay with that. And I think things like this, as a reminder for everybody, is like nothing goes up forever. There's going to be pullbacks, even 30 and 40%. That's how I see.
Yeah, good stuff. Let me make sure turn that off. Whoops. I got to juggle all the screens again. Let me see back. Okay. It's musical chairs. One of the things that is actually, it prompts me to talk about how cycles have been so similar so far, in particular 2013 to 2021. But when you look at Raoul Pal's thesis that Ethereum is tracking the 2017 Bitcoin cycle dot for dot, literally, it's uncanny. What do you guys make of that? And how is that possible? Is that just because investors are investing based on previous cycles? Or is it because it's 5 years younger? What do you think?
I'll defer to Ben on this one.
I think that it certainly is an interesting comparison for sure. And I mean, I think if we were to track it all the way, it would put Ethereum trading for somewhere around $20,000 or something within the next few months, right? It's interesting too, because it's not even like, the one issue that I could see is I think it is possible for Ethereum to certainly make it to 10K and go above 10K potentially this cycle. I think that is possible. The only thing I'm wondering about is it going to take a little bit longer than the initial theory is on that? Because for Ethereum to track Bitcoin the entire way, at this point it would need to go up about 5x in the next 4 weeks or so would be an exact tracking of it, because Bitcoin peaked in December of 2017. So if Ethereum tracks it the full way, but you also have to consider market capitalization, right? Because I mean, the market capitalization of Ethereum today is already approximately 500 billion. Which is essentially what the entire asset class almost, the asset class reached above that in 2017. It went to like 800 billion. But for Ethereum to put a 4x in from here, you're talking about it going to 2 trillion, which Bitcoin is not even at that yet, right? Bitcoin's not even, Bitcoin's half that. It's a little more than half that. So the numbers of 20K, they are possible. I think that my best guess for the Ethereum peak is probably somewhere between 10 and 20K. And that's going to be the time. Ethereum's usually the last one to move as well. It's sort of, and this Q4, it's been one of the best ones. It's just constantly moving up, but when Ethereum makes that move, and it always does, right? Always does. After Bitcoin moves, you have the altcoins move, Ethereum moves, and then Ethereum goes like 2x in 2 weeks, right? 2x in 2 weeks. It did it in 2018. 2017, 2018, it went 700 to 1,400 in 2 weeks. In April or May 2021, it went 2,200 to 4,400 in 2 weeks. I think we're going to get that again. And the point is to say, I think it could extend a bit further than an exact tracking of Bitcoin through the end of the year. But that when it hits it, I'm running for the hills with the profits at that point, right? I'm running for the hills, and whenever that occurs, basically, I have these cycle theory stuff we follow, but whenever it happens, I'm running for the hills no matter when it happens.
That's interesting. What about you, Rob? What's your target for Ethereum this cycle?
What you guys just talked about right there was about doubling, or whatever Ben said, doubling in 2 weeks for Ethereum. These are the things that I worry about when I'm looking at my crypto portfolio, because it seems like there are some times that you can look at and go, this isn't doing anything. Maybe I should get out of it right now and then put into something else. But it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, people, when we start to get out of positions that we've been into for a long time, it's like at that particular moment, that's when everything just starts to skyrocket. Like, shoot, what the heck just happened? And it kind of makes me a little bit leery about getting out of some plays. And I will tell you, the things that with Avalanche that's going on right now, about it just going, parabolic, those are the ones that I tune out, because I'm like, you know what? I just don't. If I get into Avalanche now, of course, I'm just pump chasing. So I'm not going to do that. As far as Ethereum goes, I always said it'll be around 10K. Ben is very, very positive to hit 20K. I don't know if it can, but I can tell you that when I take a look at the all exchange reserves for Ethereum, there is so much being taken off all the exchanges. It's happening even faster than Bitcoin. So that is one of the things where I'm like, that's real true utility being used, not just in staking and things like that, but NFTs and gas fees and stuff like that. So I'm just going to say around 10K and just be safe right around there.
Yeah, I said that to somebody a couple of days ago. I said, when you've studied a lot of microeconomics and macroeconomics, this is what you live for. These next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, however long the cycle goes, we're going to see supply and demand tested, and that could really, really make things explode. In fact, speaking of that, a lot of people asking in the chat here as well. The elephant in the room. This is the last 12 weeks, Solana versus Cardano, Ethereum versus Cardano. Charles was on video yesterday or today. He seemed a bit distracted, to be honest, when I listened to him. Here we have, obviously, Cardano has been suffering, down 30% in 12 weeks while the whole market has gone up. Solana's up 200%. Ethereum's up, I don't know, 50% or something like that, 60%. Where do you guys see Cardano going? Because everybody owns some Cardano. I own some. What are your plans, and is it frustrating? I know I'm on the receiving end of a lot of frustration.
I think the frustration comes from where someone entered into ADA. If you entered into ADA at 2 cents or something, I mean, it's certainly easy to cherry pick the last few weeks or whatnot. The ROI for ADA this market cycle is still like 2x what Ethereum has put in. I mean, I'm up 100x, I know, on it. So I know that the main issues I think with Cardano, I do talk about Cardano on the channel, but they have some issues they have to overcome. And launching smart contracts when they did, I think was a bit premature, because until the Plutus backend is deployed, no one can use it for anything, right? I mean, you have all these developers that are, I think people were waiting like, well, if Cardano smart contracts are out, like, why aren't we seeing all these things? And it's because the Plutus backend is not deployed, or it's in the process of being deployed and whatnot and tested. And so until you see that, you're not going to really see this ecosystem have a chance at all until it actually comes out. So I do think that is one of the reasons why it has been down. And I actually was thinking this would happen. I thought it would rally into the launch of smart contracts, and then after the launch, I'm like, look, guys, it's going to be a while before you actually look at this platform and say, can we continue on? I do think Cardano would put in new all-time highs, but you cannot. No one can dispute that Solana has been a remarkable return this market cycle, and I mean, from here on out, I think they'll both probably do well, but I still would argue that Ethereum is by far the safest macro bet you can make out of all these layer ones.
Yep, I agree with that. And in fact, people have very short-term memories too. A lot of people just look at the last 10 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, whatever. They don't talk about what happened in January of 2021 or even in March 2020. I was telling somebody as well that was a real time where you could make a severe killing on anything crypto. So, but hindsight is always 2020 vision. This is awesome. So there's another thing. This, again, some of the predictions for Ethereum are crazy. This is a very conservative one, 11,000. Since January this year, I've been always 8,900 Ethereum. Raw Pal is 20, 35, 40,000, depending on the day. But we go back to that whole supply thing, though. It is so vastly utilized by so many platforms. And I have a theory that the whales are looking at this saying, okay, we're just going to keep draining from exchanges until this thing goes parabolic, because it has to. It's just a matter of time before there's nothing left, because you want to get anything done. And remember, the interesting stat as well that people don't realize, 80% of activity done on the Ethereum network is institutional. And they don't give a toss about a $50 gas fee or $150 gas fee. It's just the person selling a $50 NFT. They're having conniptions. Everybody else is like, yeah, I'm moving $100 million. I don't care. No problem. So I do think that moment's going to come, and it's going to be very exciting to watch.
It's just to add on what you said, it's going to be exciting. But if we're talking about 80% institutions, what's the whole purpose of institutions, hedge fund managers, and those type of places is to what? Make a boatload of profit. And that doesn't mean retail, we're going to protect you, we're going to crush you. And that's their job. And I think people have to understand that. So when we talk about these different plays that are coming out there and people are like, it's going to go up forever and it's never going to fall down. I know this is a question coming up. When I see those things and I'm like, as long as greed lives inside people and as long as they're the ability to manipulate, there will be big crashes. And I'll always that's how I always see it.
So let me see. The other thing is, let's talk about the cycle and how far we see it going. All right, because I know, Ben, you've covered elongated cycles for a long time. We've covered PlanB. I think we all know, because of the China mining delay, this cycle is going to be very different. We are going longer. We're going out to end of Q1. Tied into Ethereum as well is a large amount of Ethereum that's staked until the end of March 2022. How do you feel all of this is playing out? Again, I have another weird far-brain tin hat theory that whales are trying to keep the price suppressed so there's no blow off top to attract more institutional money in, because the longer we are in the cycle, the more money will come in, the higher prices overall will be. How do you guys feel about that? How long do you see it going? Not how high, but how long? Or indefinitely even.
Yeah, I definitely don't think, I don't believe in the super cycle idea, because there's definitely a difference between like an elongated cycle and a super cycle. I think there's going to be a pretty brutal bear market at some point. I mean, I don't think we're about to start that yet, but we will start that bear market. And I think a lot of people are going to get crushed during that time, especially in a lot of these altcoins that you're seeing go parabolic and whatnot. There's only so long that they can sustain that type of those types of prices, and eventually you're going to see a lot of these projects, I think, just kind of get washed out, and then you're going to see, okay, who's actually going to stick around for the bear market and rebuild and continue growing. In terms of the length, yeah, I mean, I've always said I think it'll go. I don't think the peak's in 2021. But even then, I mean, anything's possible, and I don't ever want to say, there's nothing that's impossible, because we know anything is possible. I would say, yeah, like I think it's going to go into 2022, and I mean, certainly Q1 seems like a possibility. Q2 could also be a possibility. I mean, I think a lot of it depends on how long we spend just kind of sitting below 60K, 65K, because I think once we really get above these, like, once we actually make it to 70K and 80K, then we're going to go into true price discovery. Right now, every time we put in a new all-time high for the last 7 months, we just go up like $5,000 or $3,000, and then we just come back down. It hasn't been that interesting. No one's getting out of bed for a $3,000 new all-time high, right? We want to see it actually move up significantly. So I think a lot of that depends on when that occurs. Like, when do we actually break above? And then I think there's a good chance that's going to lead into a rally that could either, it could take us into a market cycle top for sure. But we could also argue there is at least a non-negligible chance, depending on how high we go, that it could be another local top, and then another blow-off top could come a few months after that. Which, I mean, that's certainly not something I'm relying on or anything, but it is a definitive possibility. And I think it'll depend on how high we go on the first leg. Like if we get rejected at 100K or something and come back down to 60K or 70K, then I would still say, well, we could still go up after, we could still go above 100K. But if we overshoot 100K and we just keep going in and retail FOMO mania, I think after that, it's just, we're done at some point after, over those next weeks and months. We're just done whenever that occurs.
Yeah, and look at all the rails that we have. I mean, we didn't have these kind of rails in 2017 to get into crypto. It was actually hard to get into crypto. And nowadays there are so many options for you to get into it. It's like, it's just so easy. And then the different things that are going on as far as like the marketing plays, it's everywhere. So I think like when we start to see that those 70, 80s and 100K, I think that's when everybody's going to start getting phone calls and text messages of people they haven't heard from forever going, hey, what's going on with crypto? Because I need to get into this Dogecoin or whatever they're going to talk about. So yeah, I can definitely see it. I don't know as far as like retail, how much they're going to go into it, but I think it's going to be at some point they're going to really get in, blow off top, a little bit of a bear market, and then off we go. And I will say the last thing is, since I've been in Puerto Rico, I've met a lot of interesting people in the crypto world down here, and it seems like it's the same. I hate to say this, it's the same song and dance. There's people that really believe in it and they think it's going to go far, but the vast majority it's a money play, and that's it.
So in Puerto Rico, it's interesting because I always get concerned about the echo chamber. That's why I'm very selective about what I listen to and who I listen to, because I like to make my own conclusions. But do you feel that you are now in ground zero of crypto in Puerto Rico? Because all the big players are there, a lot of them, and it's an echo chamber at all?
Well, you're not. No. There's some people that really believe in what's about to happen. And some people believe in the super cycle.
Yeah.
But there's just this underlying tone. And the thing that I worry about, and James, we've talked about this before, is that the sheer smallness of the actual market. I mean, we haven't even hit 3 trillion. We talked about how manipulation is pretty prevalent. And even if you have these institutions trying to suppress the price, if you get these retail coming in, which is what happened in 2017, they push it up. I mean, look at what they did with AMC and all the rest of the stuff over in Robinhood. I just think that at some point you can't contain it. It gets to be a blow off, and then off it goes. So
yeah, but I think because the market is so large now, it takes a lot more to move it. You know, move $1 trillion market up 30%, that's $300 billion, and that's why I think it's more of a healthier market today than it was in the past, previous cycles, perhaps.
Yeah. Right.
So
well, I mean, it's just the law of diminishing returns, right? I mean, something no one likes talking about, but it's blatantly obvious on any Bitcoin chart you look at, right?
Yeah.
It's just how the market is. But the nice thing about diminishing returns is that usually hopefully it means there's less downside volatility in a bear market. So
exactly. And I believe in the law of thirds as well. So each cycle, obviously 4-year cycle, if you look at what we did in the first cycle, say it's 3,000%, next cycle's 1,000%, next cycle's 300%. Do you believe in that type of diminishing return, Ben? In that type of ratio, or have you looked at those ratios?
Yeah, I mean, I've looked a lot at like the total crypto market cap, and I mean, I've looked at Bitcoin as well. I think I've looked at various ratios and how do you is it a linear extrapolation? Is it some type of other type of extrapolation? Unfortunately, we don't really have enough data, I think, to really know the full trend anyways. And even if we did have enough data, then the trend would probably change as people would probably start catching on to it. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think you can roughly look at it and say, look, if Bitcoin went up 100x last cycle, it's not going to go up 100x this cycle from bottom to top, which would put Bitcoin at over 300K if it could. And so that's why I think there's going to be a lot of people sort of waiting for these much higher predictions that are just simply not going to pan out. And I think that's just what we see, right? We see diminishing returns. And hey, the nice thing about diminishing returns for Bitcoin is that you still make a lot of money compared to a lot of other asset classes.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing. Like, I still try to get my brothers into it. They're all about traditional markets and getting into buying Visa and these different stocks. I don't do too much, but this is the best place to be. And to be clear, I still believe that we're going to see, like I've always said, fireworks November, December, even into January, maybe February, and who knows. But I think there's a lot of room to run. It's just I don't see the 500K Bitcoin and the 35K Ethereum. Maybe just lack of vision. I just don't see it.
Yeah, that's great. In fact, one of the questions that popped in as well from out there, we're switching gears before we open up to some Q&A, because we have a lot of people that really want to pick your brains, your respective brains. You guys understand the metaverse is a thing that's happening. I think it's happening maybe a little bit too fast, too quick. There's a lot of very frothy valuations out there. And you've got the legacy companies, the Microsofts, the Facebooks, the Nvidias, you name it. Everybody's omniverse, metaverse right now. Quick question to you both. Do you believe Facebook has a shot in this new metaverse, or are they just a zombie company?
I mean, my thoughts are that, I mean, my general thoughts are it's very unlikely to be just a single company that, controls the entire metaverse. I imagine that Facebook will have some involvement in it. I mean, they have a lot of money and, follow the money, right? But I would definitely agree with your first statement about we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves on a lot of these metaverse plays, because a lot of them, as far as I can tell, are just complete cash grabs, right? They're complete cash grabs. And it kind of, there are some similarities. I would say there are some solid projects. I'm not going to say there are not, because there are, but a lot of them are cash grabs. Kind of reminds me somewhat similar of like, not maybe as bad, but sort of the ICO craze of 2017, where it was like, okay, there's a few good things that are actually people building stuff, and then you have 1,000 other projects that are just, frivolously put together WordPress sites promising the world. So I think that metaverse plays are going to be huge plays in the next bear market. Like that is, I mean, now you can make money for sure. But in the next bear market, I'm going to be focusing on that a lot, because I do think we are heading that direction. But in the short term, I think it's getting a little ahead of it, like a little ahead of ourselves in terms of some of the valuations we're seeing, and sort of some of the FOMO we're seeing going into some of these projects. And some of them aren't even really used that much, but it's just the idea of scarcity and whatnot that I think is driving up their prices in the short term.
And Rob, we know you're a metaverse guru right now. It's a big part of your
No.
focus.
It's only part, and the more that I get into it, the more I realize that the more I need to know about it. And this is the thing that's just like Ben was talking about, a cash grab. It's almost like ICO 2.0, and I see the same thing happen with NFTs. Some are going to be good, but very, very few. And metaverse, I think there's going to be more than one, because there has to be more than one. God help us if everybody goes to Facebook's metaverse, Meta, and they start using digital assets and cryptocurrencies to actually interact and pay for things, because all that data, I mean, first of all, they have all our data anyhow, and now they're going to see all the things that we actually pay for. It just sounds so dystopian. I just don't see how it could actually happen. But I think you'll have, everything will start off with Facebook, because most people will know it. You'll have Microsoft get into their part because of business, and then it'll kind of branch out to the NVIDIAs and things like that, the Sandbox, the Decentralands, big whatever else it is. And you'll just kind of see, like, there'll be just like little cities. And I've always said, like, just like people want a vacation they want to go to LA. I'll fly to LA. I want to go to Florida. I want to go to New York. I want to go to France. You just pick the little cities you want to go to. Metaverse is the same thing. I want to go to Facebook to see all my friends, but I want to go over to Decentraland to gamble, because I can gamble with cryptocurrency, or I want to go, you see where I'm going with it? You just kind of move around. And the thing is, which ones will be the big ones? It's the ones that have the best investors, the best marketing, and the best community. So just look for those, and that's the best I can really tell you right now.
And the best user experience. Never forget the UX. That's really, really important. That drives adoption. Okay, we're good. This is where we open it up to me shilling the heck out of your channels. Okay, guys. So most everybody knows who Benjamin Cowen is. His link is below for his channel, and follow him on Twitter. He's got some of the funniest tweets, some very sarcastic ones too. Yeah. And Rob's channel, of course, you all know Rob from way back. But this is where we open up to some questions as well. This is one from Bat Pangolin in New Zealand. Just want to say, love the content, guys. Keep it up. So that's from Bat Pangolin. Super interesting name.
Thank you.
Chris Billings. Now this one is interesting. Chris says, for all three of you, what ways are you superstitious? No more bear and bull spotlights anymore. Do you all keep physical Bitcoin under your pillow for the gains fairy? So, are you guys superstitious?
Not at all. I'm not superstitious. Not at all.
How about you, Rob?
I'm not superstitious, but there was this. I have this fear, and this fear is, and I think everybody has this fear, is FOMO. Is like the time that I sell these things is the times that it actually goes up. And I've had a real hard time this year. I'm trying to overcome it. I'm getting better. I'm great at dollar cost averaging by the dips. There's no problems there. But it's actually taken out those profits. So during these dips, I have a dry powder to do it. I've actually been somewhat successful, but I'll never be as successful as I really want to be. I'm not superstitious, but that's my one problem I have.
Okay.
One great thing about that is you can also DCA out. You know, the way you DCA in.
Exactly.
Yes.
Very good.
Exactly.
Very good point. And in terms of me, I believe the university is driven by mathematics. So if math is a superstition, that's it. And speaking of mathematics, this one's from Caligula. This is for you, Ben. So was Homer Simpson who inspired you to become a nuclear engineer? And what inspired James and Rob on their paths? So some of these are jokes. Sorry, guys. I'm just reading what people say.
No, I mean it wasn't Homer Simpson. My undergrad was actually in math. My PhD was in nuclear engineering, and I actually focused mostly on like radiation damage and ceramics and that kind of stuff, not dealing with reactors and that sort of stuff. And then I've just used the mathematics I learned through those degrees to navigate the cryptoverse in a more data oriented approach.
Good.
That's awesome.
And your inspiration, Rob, on your path?
To make money? Well, I grew up poor. That's why. Yeah. So that's pretty much about it. No, I think it comes down to, I think it's everybody's responsibility. If we're going to talk about math, is to be prosperous and to to be wealthy. So we have enough freedom units. Some people call them dollars, but just to be able to do the things you want to do and take care of the people, your friends and your family and the people around you. That's what I have always thought about. And I knew I wasn't going to do that working a 9 to 5. So this is why I became an investor into real estate and cryptos and businesses.
Good. And my story you guys all know, but I've been very fortunate. So my focus has been to give back. I tried to blog about health and cancer prevention for 10 years. Nobody was interested on the side. Retired, got bored, and I saw this as the asymmetric bet of our lives. And I just want as many people to have a chance as possible. And that's why I do this. So very simple. So Cryptolicious. Ben, do you think Bitcoin will hit 100,000 this year? You're put on the spot.
Yeah, this year. Everyone wants to know if it's going to hit it this year or not. I mean, if you go back and watch any of my videos on my channel for the last 3 years, my answer every time to that question was, I think it'll hit it in 2022 is what I always said. So I don't really want to, change that stance just because we're now trading at $60,000, with a month to go. And it seems like we could be coming up to a crescendo. Look, it's a possibility that it happens in December. I still think it's probably more likely it happens in 2022. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't really think it makes a huge difference if it happens in December or January or February. But if I had to say, I'd say I would probably lean towards no. But if it doesn't hit it by December, I would think it's probably going to hit it sometime in early 2022. Awesome.
Good to know. So MT, this is one that keeps a lot of people awake and are very nervous, especially if they own a little bit of Bitcoin. There's been a lot of talk about IBM and the quantum computer coming out. Do you believe quantum computing is a danger to the blockchain?
I mean, I think not only is it a danger to the blockchain, but isn't it a danger to every computer and password system out in the entire world? So if we're talking about blockchain and quantum computing, I think be more afraid that all your passwords are gone and everything that you do to log into your bank and financial institutions is gone because it's easy to get into it. So let's see if they can keep up. But I think this was a question between the Goldbug and Alex Mashinsky on KitGo. And Alex had a great answer. He's like, look, this is like 10 years away, and we've already have blockchains that are quantum resistant. It's not Bitcoin at the moment. He goes, but as time goes on, we can solve these different types of problems. And the Goldbug went crazy and started yelling. But I don't think it's that big of a deal right now.
Exactly. It's a patch. Obviously. It's a patch on Bitcoin's code and other chains. It's not a problem. And my thought is very similar to yours, is if we're worried about crypto, we've got way bigger issues. Think medical records, not just financial records. Think governments being hacked, military secrets. That's the real concern. Ben, what's your thought on that?
My thoughts are the same, but I think too, you guys already said it, but I would fully agree that when new discoveries happen, I don't think it's something we need to be like, people are going to come up with solutions, to navigate that as well. And I think the same thing will happen in crypto and blockchain. Like, yeah, I mean, is it a theoretical threat? Yes, but there's probably bigger issues to worry about than crypto. And even then, whenever we get to that point, right, whenever we reach that point, there's going to be people trying to figure out solutions on how to still keep things safe and whatnot. And so it'll just be, a continuously evolving world that we're living in. I think it sort of brings out the best in us when we make new discoveries, not something that we should fear.
Yeah, not only that, but think about all the different jobs that are going to be created just by blockchain and getting into the new technology. All the things that we don't even realize is actually going to be a job will be a mainstay in 3, 4, 5 years. I think that's one of the bigger plays I think no one talks about as much.
Yep. Excellent point. Next question is regarding staking. You guys are staking experts, but this one is from CCD. When staking Solana on Exodus, are there too many validators, or should some be of concern? If yes, could you explain why? Well, I'll talk about kind of my view of Solana stakers. One, I always pick the biggest, most reputable. There's tons of websites where you can actually analyze the creditworthiness, etc., of the different validators out there, but also look at the amount that is in the actual pool, and that'll give you a good indication if it's safe or not. So that's just my take. And there's tons of websites. I'll try to drop some of the links of the ones I use to validate them. But what do you guys think about staking pools and risk and security yourselves? How do you vet a pool before you get in? I know you both run pools yourselves.
Ben?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, yeah. So I run a pool on Cardano. I actually run two, and then I run one on Avalanche as well. Um, Yeah, I mean, I think you want to look for, are there a lot of other people staking in there? That is generally a good idea, but also look at their past performance. Like, do they have good uptime? That's certainly something we make sure our stats are really good on. We want to always be up. If you let people down at any point, then they've completely lost their trust, right? You have to make sure you're always up and running. As far as all of that, though, I mean, in terms of staking, there's always risks, right? I mean, there's always risks with all these blockchains and whatnot. The person you're staking with knows what they're doing. Some of the blockchains you have to deal with slashing, right? If they don't stay up, that's always a concern. I think if you look at things like Solana and like other plays like the Binance Smart Chain and whatnot, I think the biggest concern is, look, I mean, like for Solana, I mean, I know you guys like Solana, and I think it's a great play. Blockchain's growing by terabytes a year, and I know they're gonna try to come up with solutions to deal with that, and I've looked into that as well. But that's always a thing. Are validators going to have any issues keeping their nodes synced and whatnot? Are the costs to running that validator, are they going to get too expensive for that person that's running it? Are they going to be profitable? Because you want your validator to be profitable, right? Because if they're losing money on it, then eventually they're going to have to shut it down. So I think those are a lot of the different things that you should look for, and just recognize those risks that are involved.
Excellent.
Yeah, and Ben just beat the D News pool to be a Sunday swap scooper. I think he got like a 5, and I got like number 40, so I got like a participation ribbon, which sucked, or whatever. But so like the one thing you want to check out, I mean, as far as like Cardano, look at the ROA, the return on ADA, because you can take a look at, you can do a monthly, you can do yearly, or you can do lifetime. And just take a look at like how is the actual return. Then just like Ben said, make sure you take a look at if there's James said there's a lot of people actually getting into it, and then the fees, because some of these fees are like ridiculous. Some are like, I've seen some stake pools 20% fees. I'm like, what the heck just happened? But people go into it because like, oh, I get 80%. But it's just something you need to make mention. And then the last thing is, as far as safety, that's what I like about Cardano. When you stake your ADA, it stays in your wallet. And you don't have to deal with slashing fees like on Ethereum. That's why when people are asking me, are you going to stake your Ethereum? I'm like, no, because I don't really know who to trust, and I want to have them slashed, and I like that way. And then Avalanche is a different animal, but just take a look at those fees and reputation and return on ADA.
Good stuff. This next one, I think it might be targeted at me. It's regarding Solend. I bought an IDO kind of to experiment how it's done, playing with VPNs and stuff like that, and just threw a little bit of money at one. It's called Solend. It's like an Aave competitor on the Solana network. It IDO'd at about $6, shot up to $13 or $14. Now it's back at $5.40. So it's under the IDO price, which is not a good situation. It's kind of like an IPO. I won't do that again. We'll see. The max spin, I do believe it has a lot of potential, but the TVL really has to grow. And there's a lot of competition. And that's one of the things I think it's probably a separate discussion point, is when you look at spaces, if you look at the top 300 cryptos right now, literally, I'd say 50 to 80 of them are NFT plays. I mean, how much is enough already? You talk about cash grab, etc. Like, who's going to win? So how do you guys view the market when you see such tremendous competition? Because I've always been of the view there's maybe 1 or 2 winners in any category, not 50 or 60. How do you guys view that?
What, like NFTs or just in general?
In general. Well, let's talk NFTs. Let's talk metaverse. I mean, let's talk gaming. There's just so much VC money, so much. It's a total bubble as far as I'm concerned right now, because the market is not big enough to sustain so many players with such valuations, in my opinion, right now.
The thing that, I mean, just real quick, the thing I look at is, as far as like just NFTs per se, is that I always viewed it as ICO 2.0. Again, a lot of things are going to go to zero, but there's going to be some gems. So I take a look at, I have the criteria it's pretty simple for me. I take a look at the community by going to the Twitter and the Discord, make sure they have at least over 1,000. 1,000 is good, 10K is better. If I get to like the 50, 75K, I wonder if that's actually bots in Discord. So I'm a little bit leery. And then the next thing I take a look at is what's the utility? Because if I'm just buying a goofy JPEG, that is nothing for me. But if it has something else where you can actually mint another type of NFT, if there's some kind of gamification, if you get some type of like an extra drop like Doge Pound and things like that, okay, I can get there. And the last thing is the price. I'm not going to buy ETH rocks for 10,000 Ethereum. I mean, I don't think that's crazy. So I try to get it like the floor price around 0.1 and below, and then go from there. Because if I mess up, I mess up, and a lot of these are going to go to zero. So I'm going to, but I try to do it like that. That's just the NFT play, and the metaverse play. That's a whole different thing. I'll let Ben answer instead of sucking up too much time.
No, I mean, it's fine. I think you're right. I mean, James, and both of you. I mean, I think that most of them are going to go to zero. It's the same thing as the ICOs in 2017. I mean, most of them are, when you're living in the moment, it's easy. If you say anything bad, right, all the communities they're not going to like it. And the reason they'll do that is because in the short term, the price is more likely to keep trending higher if we stay in a bull market, right? Like, so if we stay in a bull market, a lot of these coins can keep going up for a while. But a lot of those are just way too risky for me, and I don't want to bet my money on. And so I agree. I think that you're sort of seeing people are experimenting right now. They're gonna continue to experiment for a little while.
Yeah.
The bear market's going to hit. That's going to flush out all the noise, and then I think you're right. There'll be a few projects that kind of stick around, maybe more than a few. They'll keep building, but eventually the people are going to speak, and they're going to flock to the ones that actually have the best utility. Like, I mean, again, some of these platforms, some of these metaverses, who's using them, right? At the end of the day, like, are people actually using it, or is it just something that you can say you own? If only 100 people are actually using it, then what's the long-term play there? You want hundreds of thousands, you want millions of people using these things, and so I think that's sort of the thing we have to consider is that, and I agree. I think most of these things are ultimately gonna die out, and a few slight. And the same thing goes with layer ones, right? I mean, we're not going to have a world where we're going to have 40 different layer one solutions, and where there's that many different communities. I do think there's room for more than just Ethereum, but I don't think we're going to have 50 or 100 different L1s all having thriving communities. There's going to be a few that went out.
Exactly. That's an interesting one. What about if you talk about the multi-chain layer ones, if they all become truly multi-chain capable, won't everybody gravitate towards the one that's easiest to use with the lowest fees, and then everything else will wither and die over time? Is that your theory as well?
I mean, you would think so. You would think that people would just go to the fastest, the easiest, the cheapest, right? And then that would be the winner, and it would make a lot of sense. But there's sometimes that it just comes down to, on top of that, just really good marketing and what's really going on. Like, I see like these layer ones. There was a great video by Mark Moss. He talks about in the beginning as far as like cars and Ford and the Model T. As soon as that one came out, then you had like hundreds of different auto manufacturers come out, and they said, we're going to build it too. And they built it, but there was no demand for it. And they all just withered and died and then went back down. And now we balloon out to more. So I think the same thing's going to happen with crypto. There's really not much demand, so it's going to compress. And they're going to find actual utility, and then it's going to actually, build themselves out. But that's how I see things, and I think the plays the safest: Ethereum, Avalanche, you got Solana, Cardano, and then the Tezos and stuff like that. But who knows?
Polkadot, that's almost layer zero, but
yeah. Awesome. There's a couple, two or three quick questions before we wrap up, everybody. Big thank you as well. Don't forget to subscribe to Ben and Rob below if you haven't already. Will Solana go down to the 180s again? I don't think so. I think for this bull run, we won't see the 180s until there's a massive retracement, if there is one. I think the SCP layer ones are too strong right now. This question is from Steve G. If Bitcoin's above 65K, if Solana's above 225, and Ethereum's above 4.5K, what do you buy? Where do you park your money? So what would you guys be buying anything right now?
Ben, what do you got?
I mean, I think a lot of it depends on what you already have, right? I mean, like, if you already have the blue chips in your portfolio, which I consider Bitcoin and Ethereum, those are always the safest to add to. as far as that, I mean, as far as beyond that, it always is hard chasing something that's up 100x, right? Like if you don't own Solana, it's hard to buy it at these prices. If you don't own Avalanche, it's hard to buy it at these prices. Um, this is certainly not the time, in my opinion, to bet the family farm on altcoins, right? It's not the time to bet the family farm. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't. You could still DCA into some projects that maybe haven't moved yet. A lot of these L1s that I like to think of it like a money ball, goes from one L1 to another, right? It went to Solana for a while. I mean, we'll start last year, like late 2020, it was on Cardano for some reason, right? Like that's where it was. And then then it went up a lot. And then we know earlier this summer, it was in Solana. I mean, Solana went, what, $20 to $200 in a few weeks. Right now it's on Avalanche, and they're offering these $100 million, DeFi incentive programs and whatnot, and all the money's going to there. So I look at it and say, would I go to the ones that are already pumping? Probably not. I probably would look at the ones where do I think the money ball is going to go next, right? Where do I think it's going to go next? And one of the projects I think that is somewhat undervalued compared to some of the others is Polkadot, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
It's still up 10x from where it was about a year ago, but I look at that one and say, and you also have the parachain slot auctions and whatnot ongoing right now, so I think that looks relatively good. Look, a lot of the layer ones I still think are probably gonna go higher, as even you said, you don't think Solana is gonna go back down to the 180s. I think they're gonna go higher as we continue on through the bull market. And ultimately, you have to figure out, right, not what you value, what do you think the market's going to value? Because all of them are just an optimization problem between decentralization, scalability, and security. There's not one that's necessarily better than all the others. There's just some that optimize different things better than other projects. And so figure out what you think the market's going to value, and then, that's probably where the money ball is going to go next.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And that's kind of like what we started off saying at the beginning, is people look for the undervalued assets. I do agree with you on Polkadot as well. I also think Matic and Chainlink are also quite undervalued considering the value that they bring. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, Matic,
Chainlink.
Matic and Link has been, oh my gosh, Link has been one I've been riding forever, and it's like the last 14 months have been pretty brutal, because one of the things, and I still own my Link position, by the way. I still have my Link position. I have not sold it. The problem, though, that I keep looking back to is everything can go up in a bull market, but does it bleed against Ethereum, right? Does it bleed against Ethereum? Solana does not bleed against Ethereum, right? It's been going up against Ethereum. You want to make sure they at least oscillate against Ethereum, right? Avalanche is oscillating against Ethereum. Cardano, while in the short term it's bled against Ethereum, it oscillates over the last several years. Unfortunately, over the last 14 months, Link has been bleeding against Ethereum by about 80% or more. So I do agree. I completely agree. It's undervalued. It's completely undervalued. And one of the things that's interesting is Link did extremely well during the last bear market, right? During the last bear market is really when Link did exceptionally well. It'll be interesting to see if Link, I do think it'll do well in the remaining part of the bull market. I'm actually curious to see what's it going to do when Bitcoin turns bearish. Like, is it going to kind of repeat its 2018, 2019 move where it put in new all-time highs when the entire asset class was down 90%? I don't know. I do think Link's undervalued, and I still can't wrap my head around why it's not higher.
Yeah, especially with the growth of the DeFi space, and it just should be, drug up with the rest of the players. That's fascinating. Adam in Toronto, this guy, he said, a longtime follower. I'm on Ben's premium. So you have somebody here from Canada who's on your premium list, I think, Ben, and probably hundreds and hundreds of others. So they send you, everybody, very positive juju and keep growing. And a big thank you to everybody who sent in super stickers. So we try to keep this to an hour so as not to burn too much family time. Also, big apologies to everybody. We had no idea. Obviously, we're not sports fans. I think this is bumping up against some type of NFL football game, an early football game. So apologies for that. We'll get better next time. You can see I don't watch much football or any. So I watch crypto. That's my job.
Yeah.
All right. So any final thoughts, you guys? The week ahead, what do you see happening? Are we going to get that next 9 days up to PlanB numbers, or hang tight?
No, but I mean, we're definitely in the right direction. But the big thing is we always come off these weekends, and the big days are Mondays and Tuesdays. So I'm just curious to see if it's going to have another pullback or not. I don't see why we really would, even with the liquidations and things that are going on there. I'm hoping that we'll go higher, but I just look at it like this. It's not a big deal what happens in the short term. I'm just looking at the long term, looking at Q1 2022 and even late December.
Well, Sunday nights I've noticed as well. Way back in the middle of the summer, Sunday nights pumped, and then it kind of started moving to Mondays or very early Monday morning Pacific time, like 2 a.m. was the shopping time when things just exploded. So I think Sunday could be a great day. Looking at the strength, at least on the layer ones right now, Ethereum and Bitcoin are lagging, but I think we could have some action, some fireworks tonight. So with that, guys, really appreciate it. Hope everybody here in the audience liked this too. Ben, thank you for being on. Rob, you enjoy the rest of the Sunday with the crypto family there in Puerto Rico.
That's right. I'll try. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, team.
Thanks for having me.
Bye. Yeah, pleasure.